What's up, everybody? Welcome to this Friday edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast. The XFL is back. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson announced it. That's what everyone's talking about. I wish that were the case. I wish we were talking about the XFL coming back and not a major injury to Allen Lazard. I had unfortunately become aware of this earlier in the week. I had a couple people reach out to me and message me saying, "Hey, Lazard is going to end up on IR." Both the messages that I got said something about his groin, which is why, frankly, I didn't want to try to break any news. Neither of the sources were reputable enough for me to run with them. And if you know me, most of you don't know me, but I pretend to be a lot of things, whether that be an analyst or whatever, but I am not a person who has sources and an ear to the ground and figuring out what's happening. So I don't have any way of substantiating these sort of things, but I did hear early in the week again from a couple different people that Lazard was likely going to miss some time. I heard originally 4 to 6 weeks. Like I said, I had originally been told a groin injury. It sounds like it's some sort of core injury, and it sounds like he's already had surgery on it. So this is really bad and in a way devastating news. We don't know the length of the injury. There's been, I know everyone and their mom is basically Googling, all right, how long does it take to get back from a core injury? There's some who can play through it. There's some who can have surgery. Again, it sounds like Lazard already had surgery. So this is going to be some sort of elongated absence. I don't know for sure what that means, whether that's, 5 to 6 weeks, whether that's 8 to 10 weeks. The hope, of course, is that he's back at some point and can help this team, hopefully down the road when there's hopefully a playoff run going on. But it's going to be kind of a wait and see sort of thing for now. And until we hear differently, all we know is that Allen Lazard is going to be out for some time frame. Likely will go on the IR, especially now since it's at least, you only have to put him on for 3 weeks. You don't have to put him on any longer than that. So I would expect him to go on IR in some capacity. When I initially heard the news, the first thing is just devastated for the guy. He comes off his best game of his career, best game as a Packer, really led the Packers offense this last week, had a fantastic game. He's grown into this position. He's become one of Aaron Rodgers' favorite targets, really bailed the Packers out in a couple games a season ago. And again, just came off that massive game against the Saints. So you hate to see this for Allen Lazard. That was kind of my first and initial reaction. Nobody's worked harder. Nobody's grinded more than Allen Lazard to kind of get to the position that he's in now. The good news is that there's not going to be anyone that's going to outwork Allen Lazard as he kind of works back from this injury and tries to get himself back to help this team towards the end of the year. But there's two real major things that the Packers are going to miss from Allen Lazard. The first is his blocking ability. They have other receivers on the roster. They have other receivers that are capable of doing different things. There's nobody quite like Allen Lazard on the roster that blocks the way that he does and has that sort of physicality. And that's really been I think weapon's probably a strong word, but it's definitely something that Matt LaFleur and this offense have used to their advantage. So losing out on that is definitely disappointing. And then secondly, it takes away one of your options, and I kind of look at it as it gives you less outs in a game, especially if you're losing that game. Let's go back the past few weeks and look at how Matt LaFleur's utilized his players. Whether we've seen Josiah DeGuara in a variety of different ways week one, we've seen Tyler Ervin used in a bunch of unique ways. He's used receivers, he's used a lot of bootlegs, getting his tight ends out in open space. This is an offense that doesn't necessarily need Allen Lazard to be successful on a down-by-down, game-by-game basis. That being said, it definitely takes away a few different things that Lazard does well. I mentioned already blocking, but it also takes away one of your better receiving weapons should you get down by 14 points and need to come back. Or if you're down by 7 and need a touchdown on that last drive and it's a 2-minute drill and the opposing team knows that you're going to be throwing the football. It's one thing to have Matt LaFleur being able to scheme up all these different things when the game is tied or maybe you're down early in the game or when you're up by 7 or up by a lot. Those things work really well. And I think this offense is going to continue to click in most scenarios because of that, because Matt LaFleur is firing on all cylinders. Aaron Rodgers is firing on all cylinders. You still have Aaron Jones. Devontae should be back, sooner rather than later, maybe not this week. But they have enough weapons to be very successful. Their offensive line is playing fantastic. But when you get into a situation where the opposing team knows you're going to throw the football, that's the situation where you want Davante Adams and Allen Lazard and all these different options out there, MVS, because you need your best players to win one-on-one matchups. And that's something that Allen Lazard has showed that he's capable of doing. So you have one less of those guys. And now it's going to put pressure on guys like Darius Shepard and Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Malik Taylor and those sort of players who are going to have to step up and play better in his stead. Now, a couple different things here. There's going to be at some point in time where Davante Adams is probably back sooner rather than later. Equanimeous St. Brown will also come back. And I think this offense has more than enough weapons. If you are going to line up and go with, MVS and EQ and Davante Adams up until the point that hopefully Allen Lazard comes back down the road, I think that definitely gives you enough weapons for the time being to be able to replace him with not having to go out and make any sort of major move. This week definitely could be more challenging. If Davante Adams is out, and of course we know Allen Lazard is going to be out, now you could go into a game that has the potential to be a shootout with the Atlanta Falcons with MVS, Darius Shepard, Malik Taylor as your receivers. Now, we know that Tyler Ervin's going to line out a receiver. We know they have 4 wide receivers currently on the practice squad. They just signed Juwan Winfrey and Caleb Scott to the practice squad. They've already had Robert Foster and Reggie Begelton. I would fully expect at minimum either Reggie Begelton or Robert Foster to get moved up. I'd be fairly surprised if either Winfrey or Caleb Scott got moved up to the active roster this week, simply because they are still very, very new to the team. It's tough to come in on a Wednesday and get ready to play for Monday. Maybe they could do it, but I'd still be shocked if they beat out either Reggie Begelton or Robert Foster, who have been here a little bit longer. And honestly, that specific spot probably comes down to special teams maybe a little bit more than it does actually needing them as a wide receiver on the outside. But going into this week, at minimum, that depth chart gets really, really thin. Let's take a look at it, kind of, where they're at right now. Again, they have got Adams, who's hurt, MVS, Malik Taylor, Darius Shepard, and Tyler Ervin, again, kind of in that gadget wide receiver role. EQ likely coming back from IR at some point, but we don't really have a great feel as to when that will be. Hopefully after the bye week, maybe he's ready to go. That's just conjecture on my part. I don't know that to be the case. And then again, Reggie Begelton, Robert Foster, Caleb Scott, and Juwan Winfrey is where they're sitting right now. So they have some options in-house. I know a lot of people are saying, well, they have to go out and get somebody. They have to bring somebody in. There are 2 somewhat unique options out there. One you know very well, and many of you have made mention of it already, and that's Jake Kumerow, who's sitting on the Bills practice squad. He would obviously bring that blocking element. He, not Allen Lazard, was actually the best run blocker for wide receivers last year per Pro Football Focus. Easy for me to say. He would bring that element. He knows the offense. He knows the routes. It would certainly seem like a logical route to go for at least a few weeks up until maybe EQ or some of these guys get back healthy. Another option that would be somewhat interesting is Taywan Taylor. Taywan Taylor was a Tennessee Titan. He was with Matt LaFleur in Tennessee in 2018, was with the Browns last year, is currently on the Browns practice squad. So he knows Matt LaFleur's offense, definitely would bring a speed element, probably would be a better replacement for a guy like MVS, and they kind of already have a similar type of player in a Robert Foster on the practice squad, but still some similarity with the offense and has actually played significantly, might be a little bit strong, but in real regular season action. So those would be 2 options. What a lot of people don't understand is when you sign a player off of the practice squad, you have to pay them and guarantee them for 3 weeks. So basically, you have to keep them on the active roster for 3 weeks and pay them for 3 weeks. If EQ and Davante are set to be back by Tampa Bay, that may not be a route that you want to take, but both of those are actually decent options that are out there. So what I expect is I expect them to go into this week undermanned, try to get a win against the 0-3 Falcons using what Matt LaFleur has done really well on offense so far, and hope to get Davante and EQ back sooner rather than later, and those will be your reinforcements. And again, hoping to get Allen Lazard back later in the year. This is a team that's going to be fighting for the playoffs and hopefully making a run at the end of the year, and hopefully all of these guys will be healthy by the time week 16, 17 and the playoff run comes along. As of right now, nobody seems to be out for the year that we know of now that is going to affect them in their playoff run. So that does it for me. That's what I expect the Packers to do with Allen Lazard being out for the foreseeable future. Hopefully we get some good news sooner rather than later, and that it's maybe only a 5 to 6 week injury rather than a 10 to 12 week injury. Fingers crossed. Certainly thinking about Allen Lazard and hoping he can get back sooner rather than later. make sure to check out Andrew and Kyle. I am sure Andrew is devastated with the Allen Lazard injury news, so make sure to check out him. Reach out to him as well for today's Pack a Day podcast, wherever you get podcasts. I'm out of here. Check me out tomorrow. I'll see you then. Go Pack Go.